Yes. So going back to what we were talking about, jobs and positions. So when you define a job, you can live with a job, okay? And you can define it like a position, and you can say HR manager or executive vice president and stuff like that. On the finance side, on the position side, you may opt to not use positions at all. In that case, it's fine from the application side. Only thing you lose out is defining the position hierarchy. Okay, a lot of companies use their approvals based on the hierarchy, saying that okay, if a purchase order is worth, let's say $10,000, it will be approved by the manager. If it is worth $50,000, it has to go to the head of the department. If it is $100,000, it has to go to the finance CFO, and so on. That determination becomes a bit difficult if you are not using a position hierarchy. Through jobs also you can do that, but in that case you will have to tinker around a little more with the workflow and all that.
Okay, so now when we say that, okay, let's for example, where we are not defining position. So now let's say, as I said, right, job is a set of responsibilities that the employee has to perform. Now, how do I define? So see, position, let's say for one job I have 5 positions. Okay, but I'm not defining the position. So how do I define the job? Do I define it as job 1, 2, 3 like this?
Yes, you would have to do it like that, or you have to be little more specific. For example, you say HR manager India. Okay, you might have HR. Earlier you had 5 HR managers which were located in 5 geographies. Now you would have to identify them separately, distinctly. Now on the job side, what also happens is when you assign a person a position, so that position can be a single incumbent position, that is only one person is allowed, or it can be a shared position where more than one person is allowed. Okay. Now on the job, there is no such requirement as. So you can just define an HR manager and you can assign it to as many people as you want.
Okay. Okay. And also the FT thing, right? Can we define it on the job level, or can we define only
on the position? It is on the position level. Now on the job level, the things that we do is like, you create a DFF and maintain that. That is main information tracking. It has no other implication from the application side.
Correct.
Now on the position, that FT is critical. If that FT is exhausted, system will not allow you to assign people onto the position.
Okay. Most of the companies now have this FT thing, right? So have you seen any place where they have implemented without position, or is it mostly with jobs and position?
See, actually what happens is, a lot of these companies, they do this FT tracking outside the system.
Okay.
Because that FT, the way companies define it, can be very different from how Oracle allows it. They might say, oh, this Oracle one doesn't fit in with me. So they will maintain their own spreadsheet and they will do all their calculations. One thing that, a lot of people say is this is more like they just keep on doing what they have been doing, right? And one is just to ensure their jobs survive, right? So they don't want to go into the application because then they may be making themselves redundant. But that's the critics saying that. But some of them have elaborate FT rules, to be fair. So when you have those elaborate FT rules, all of those you can't possibly track in the application.
Okay.
Yes, Shivani, any question?
I'm just hearing, but the terminologies are new to me.
Sorry, your voice is breaking up. I couldn't make out.
I'm hearing out, but the terminologies are new to me. This all.
Yes. So don't worry. you later on, you may go through this. I will, if you have any questions, do let me know. Okay. As you do these things in the application, these will become more clear to you.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, let me just see if I can get into the application. Okay, so I've just, let me share the screen. I've just signed into the application. This is the same URL that I used yesterday. I shared it with both of you. So I don't know if you got a chance to go into the application.
So currently you spoke yesterday about the version, right? So this is the current version using in the other companies too.
Yes. And with the cloud, actually, now this multiple version thing is gone. There's always one version which is made available to everyone. Okay. Now, when we want to define an enterprise, we go to the setup and maintenance. I'll first show you the normal way of defining the enterprise and all that. Then I will show you the individual pieces where you can define them as and when needed. So we go to the setup and maintenance. And over here, search for enterprise. This is probably a bad habit, but I tend to pass it on to everyone. Ideally, you should be clicking here and then looking up the task and doing it. But I find this easier. I don't need to remember where it is. So I just search. So I get this establish enterprise structures. So this is the one where we go first to define the enterprise that we need.
Sir, if you get time, can you also explain this UI? What are the functional areas? How do it? Whenever.
Yesterday we talked about the functional areas, right?
Did we? Okay.
Okay. No, if you want more, let me know. I'll talk about it. No problem. Okay. See, when you're defining an enterprise, we click on this plus sign. These are the different enterprises which are there. We click this plus sign and there is a wizard sort of, which will take you through all the setups that are needed one by one. So let's say I always when you're defining anything in the system, use your name prefix. Okay, so that you know that you are the one who is defining it, because there are lots there, you will find multiple things which have the same names and things like that, which can be confusing. So once you say okay, system opens up here. So you can give the enterprise name SP. It is quite like if you think of the Tatas, you could have a Tata Sons as the enterprise. So you get everybody inside the Tata organization in one single umbrella. Okay. Or it could be a Tata Motors or a Tata Steel or a Tata consultancy. Okay. So only there, if that is the enterprise, then you can only hold their information. Anybody outside that company cannot get access to the screens. So this is the short name. And here you choose a primary industry, depending on which industry your enterprise belongs to. I just chose one. Headquarters country, depending on which country you choose, you will have to provide a corresponding address later on. Now here, this is the legal entity. This is the official name of the company. So let's say I call it as SP Enterprises Private Limited. These are the legal entity identifiers. Typically, these are unique numbers. Like in India, you have the CIN, the corporate identification number. You can put it here, or any other identifiers that are provided. And this is the legal address. So when you have the legal address, if you can't see the legal address defined here, you can create it by clicking on this create button. Can you see this? Create button.
One question.
Yeah.
Initially we told that for one instance, right, we can have only one enterprise. Okay. Now I just saw there were a lot of enterprises. How does it? There's no restriction as such that I cannot create it, or how?
Actually, how they do it is you can because see, ultimately there has to be someone who will have multiple enterprise access. Otherwise, they will not be able to give access to somebody else. At a point of time when you sign in, you will be signing into one enterprise only.
Okay.
Right. So there is an administrator sitting somewhere in Oracle or on the Oracle data center or somewhere who is having access to all this, who is giving access to enterprise 1, enterprise 2, enterprise 3. Like I said, initially what they do is they create a user ID, password and an enterprise and give it to you. And then you can go in and define your own things as per your need and use that going forward.
Okay, but typically when it comes to implementation, right, there will always be one enterprise, right?
Yes, yes. Let's say I call it as headquarters and Main Street.
We have to not give any random location, right? Because whatever the data we have been provided, only that one we have to mention.
Random data. Yeah, what are you saying?
So I was asking, like, whatever we are filling the details, the data which we have been given, only that one we cannot give any random location or create.
Yes, yes, because there would be some restrictions. Like I chose the headquarters India, so even later you will see whenever I am defining a location, I have to specify the country. Based on the country, the corresponding location will appear.
Also, before we start with the enterprise setup, the geographies or something, do we need to set up that before, Saurabh?
Geographies is specific to things like geographies is more important in countries like US or Canada or UK, where there is a lot of geography, zip code and pin code validations there.
Okay.
But those are all maintained by Oracle. So there you have the Vertex, there's a Vertex tax provider, which provides all these information. And these are usually provided by Oracle, or if not, in the beginning of the implementation, there could be a Vertex file that gets loaded to get the up-to-date information regarding the taxes.
So that Vertex file is preloaded by Oracle.
Preloaded, or what happens is from time to time there could be changes. Right, so there could be updates, maybe every year there could be updates, right? And in US particularly, you have taxes for different state. You have state level payroll taxes, you have city level payroll taxes, you have municipality level payroll taxes also. Not all, but some. So depending on which state or which city an employee resides in, there could be multiple level of taxes. So different tax rates, all those become important.
So will you be covering geographies also? Yes.
Geographies, there is nothing much. I can show you that, but other than that, there's nothing much. Okay, now here, when we are talking about this legal information, against this, we have the interview to be continued to set up more legal entities, or you can complete the setup with one legal entity, meaning whether you have one legal entity or more than one legal entity. Okay, so if you need more legal entities, you will click on this. If you don't need any more legal entities, you have only one legal entity, then you can choose this option. Okay, so let's say we need more legal entities. So I will click on this and say next. And at the top, you will see step 1, step 2, step 3. All these are part and parcel of your enterprise definition flow. So this one is about the divisions that you're defining. Let me define quickly 2-3 divisions. Let's say I call it Asia division. So since it's India, we'll get the address that we have already defined, the headquarters.
Can we have division in the same country? No, right?
Yeah, you could have a passenger vehicle division, and you could have a commercial vehicle division.
That will it not come as part of the business unit, or?
It depends on how your organization is structured. Okay, there is no
Structure.
restriction from an Oracle perspective.
Okay, it doesn't stop me here or
Yes.
give me an error or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I say United States and I come here, since there is no US address defined, nothing will show up. See, we defined the one for India, but still it doesn't show up because my country is US over here. So again, I need to create a US address. So the postal code for US is very, very critical here. Unless the postal code is right, one way is you can put in the postal code and the corresponding city, state, county gets populated. or the other option is you can enter them manually and then choose. Okay. And once you have done this, you say, okay. So this is done. Let's define one for Europe.
So setting up the enterprise, right? This is the only UI,
Yes.
right?
This is the only UI for defining in complete flow. And there are separate UIs for individual, like you go to the business unit screen, you can define business unit. You go to the legal entity screen, you can define the legal entity.
Okay. And then when we define in different separate UIs, do they get linked automatically or we have to link them then, right?
Yeah, those you will have to, like when you define a business unit, you have to do it for a particular legal entity. Or when you're defining a legal entity is usually within the enterprise. So you don't link it to anything else. But if you're defining a division, you combine them. So those you will have to do manually.
Okay. So basically loading of the zip boards and everything that comes as part of the geography, right?
Geography. And this UK, Canada, US, to some extent Australia, they don't accept any other zip code than the ones that are defined.
So the setting of the validation also, uh, uh, that is also part of geography only?
That is defined by Oracle as part of their application setup.
Oh, okay.
Like you see here, we have not done anything, but all these validations are in place.
Okay.
So here, now this is about the legal entities. Okay. So we already have one legal entity. If you need more legal entities, you can define. So you can define it for a separate country. Maybe you want to define one for US. So
Usually legal entity, one enterprise, no, like legal entity can be for one country, right?
yes, usually these are country specific.
Okay. What I have seen is that, see, we define legal entity and everything,
Hmm.
right? But what happens when, let's say, we go and hire an employee, anything, we always deal with legal employees.
Yes, on the HR
Right.
side, it is legal employees.
Yes. So I tend to have a lot of confusion. How do I, so now I am defining the legal entity right now.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
So how do they become a legal employer, or what is the, uh, what do you call it, the relationship? Is it one to many, one to one? How is it?
Okay, just hold on to that question.
Okay.
So this is the business unit. Okay, now at this point we have defined, we are now defining the different business units. Now business units can automatically get created from the legal entity. So every legal entity is a business unit, or you can define them as per your need. Okay. So these are the three business units that I have created. And then we come to the reference data set. Reference data set is basically combination of the setup data to provide access to different users. Okay, so a user in US will only see US setup data. A user in UK will only see UK setup data, and so on. So,
And which data are we talking here? What kind of data?
the setup data, like, positions is one example, or you have the other setups that are there in the application. So these, on the HR side, it's a little less. On the finance side, the business units have very, very specific setups, which have to be like, payment terms, or, the customer sites, or the different supplier related sites. So those can be for specific business units. Okay, so there this reference data set plays a bigger role. Now here what we do is we just, as of now, just set it to common set when you're defining it, so that it will be visible across.
So when we say common set, it can be seen across the enterprises.
Correct. Correct.
And enterprise will be within that enterprise.
Within the enterprises. Actually, within the enterprise and common, these are seeded. So they come with the application, and then you can define as per your need.
A custom set.
Yes.
Okay. So again, my question is that, see, now one instance would have only one enterprise, right? So ideally, so how does a common set, when I say common set, it will be across enterprise. Anyway, there's only one enterprise.
No,
right?
not just across enterprise, it could be across entities, right? So
Okay.
within the enterprise, you have a common set, which is specific to a business unit, or you might have something which is spanning across business units.
If we set, I think setting up as common set doesn't have any harm, right?
Yes, that's why it is visible to everybody. So that's why we initially keep it as common set till you come to a situation where you can define for very specific needs.
And we can change it later, switch it.
Yes, you can. Or you have to actually, what happens is once you have defined, but once you have assigned it, then you will not be able to change it. Till the point you can assign it, you'll be able to change it. Or when you are defining, you have to define those, group them together and link them to a common entity and then have it visible.
So, okay, once I submit it, then I cannot
Yeah.
revert it.
Now here, this is a review of the different steps. Okay. So you have step 1, step 2, step 3 that we have gone through. Here you can see the result of what we have defined. So we have defined 3 divisions: India, Asia, US, and Europe. Then we have 2 legal entities, one in India, one in US, and 3 business units. And there are 2 reference data sets. And once you have defined this, there is also a management reporting structure which shows you 2 levels of reporting. So this is the ultimate holding company. Okay. And here's the division. And here's the Asia division. When you double click this, you will see the legal entity here. Okay. So this is the legal entity that has been defined for the US.
So who all can view this apart from us when we finish this task?
Who all can? Sorry, what was the question, Shivani?
So I was asking when we finish this whole task, I mean these 7 steps, who all can view apart from this?
Who all can view? Okay. Basically, yeah, the objective is that once you have defined it, you would load all these definitions into the system. Okay, once you load it, then it becomes accessible to other users. Till the point you load it, see, there is one step which is status is load. Okay, usually we don't load this because there's a lot of sample data in the main application, which is linked to the Vision Corporation. So once you load it, it will show you only the things that you have configured. Okay, so that other users can start using those legal entities or the business units or the divisions that have been defined. And you have to give them access. So once they get access, they will start seeing all of this in the system. Okay.
So for loading, we just need to click on that arrow and it will just load.
Yes, just load this and then it will get loaded. Now here you can also review the results. So this review results also gives you the option to download the technical summary report. Okay, so once you download this technical summary report, it is like a documentation of the setups that have been done in the system. So like I was telling you about the documentation requirements yesterday. So that's the documentation requirement that you have.
Mm-hmm. At any point of time, let's say when I have done this setup, can I change anything before loading it or after loading it?
Again, this is a yes and no answer. Most of my answers, will be yes and no, because you can do things up to a certain point. You can change certain things, but you may not be able to change everything. That is one. Second, most of these changes are allowed till you assign it to something else, some other entity which is dependent on it.
Yeah. Yeah, the child, okay,
Child.
relationship.
If there's a child relationship, then in most cases, you will not be able to change anything.
Yeah, it will not allow me to delete
Yes.
now.
Yes. So this is how the technical summary report looks like. And this is how the typical documentation expectation is there that you would be defining. So this is the enterprise that has been defined. And these are the divisions that have been defined and legal entities.
So at any point of time for any client, right, if I want to understand the whole structure, I can just download this document.
Yes, you can, provided you have been given access to the screen.
Okay. Okay. And again, the general practice, right, when we start the implementation, the general practices should be that before loading, I just review all the data, and then when I'm confirmed and everything, then I should load it.
Yes, yes.
And after loading also, is there any way we can delete it completely or roll back the
Yeah,
changes?
there is an option to roll back the configuration, that you have this button rollback configuration. So you
Okay.
can undo that also.
So rollback would only be applicable for the ones which are not loaded or which are loaded?
The ones that are loaded.
Okay, once for loaded. Okay.
The ones that are not loaded, you can just go and delete them here anyways, if you want to clean up the trash.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay, now this is one. Now, once your enterprise's definition is done, you go through this configure jobs and positions questionnaire. So once you click on this, it tells you that you have chosen construction and jobs is recommended for this industry. So you have two options. You can say, I want to use this option. So that will bring an end to the question. Or you can say, I want to explore other options. In that case, when you say, I want to explore other options, it gives you these questions. How do you manage the replacement? So when someone leaves, so managers usually replace the person, but can use the headcount and hire to a different job, or managers usually rehire to the same post, but can request a reallocation of budgets to create a different post, or managers can replace the person by rehiring to the same role or freeze the post for budget purposes. So depending on the requirement, you will get another set here. Okay, this is the summary advice, or you get this, or you get this. Basically, it's the same. Ultimately, you can just say, no, I want to use positions, and you can continue and you can just go ahead and create positions. Okay. Now, if you still want to use positions, then system will give you the option to define certain attributes. The attributes are additional fields that you can define for the job. This is for the position level attributes. This is for the job level attributes. These are additional information fields that you want to define in the system. If you don't want to define anything, just leave it blank. Okay. Or in case you want to define, you may define it and keep it here.
Can you give an example where we need additional attributes for both
There could be something like a job code that you want to define and track against each job, or a position code. Okay, a lot of companies, they do a a consulting assignment for HR, and they come up with codification of the jobs and the positions, and then you want to track them in the system.
When we create a job and position, doesn't the code gets automatically created?
No, that's a position ID, which is a number. Okay, so there is a position code which is like an alphanumeric. It can be anything, so long as it is unique.
Most